Hi, I'm Annie of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 44 of season 4 of Live with Annie. Today we will be joined by Christa Watson of Christa Quilts. Christa is an accomplished quilter, fabric and pattern designer, teacher, and author who is known for her vibrant designs and easy-to-duplicate techniques. We will talk about Christa's upcoming new video series featuring machine quilting designs and more, so stay tuned. If you enjoy these episodes, please take a minute to follow us wherever you are watching, and if you know someone else who you think might enjoy the information that we share, we would really love it if you'd tell them about Live with Annie. Joining us today is Christa Watson of Christa Quilts. Many of you may remember that Christa joined us back in Season 2, Episode 22, to share tips for machine quilting on a domestic machine. She has been working really hard this year on a new video series to accompany her best-selling book, 99 Machine Quilting Designs. So we have invited her back to tell us all about that. Please help me welcome Christa back to Live with Annie.
Hey, it's so great to see you again.
It is so good to see you again, too. And we are just going to dive right in because we've got lots to talk about today. So I'm hoping that you can start by spilling the beans a little bit about this new series of videos that you've been working on over the summer.
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, I have to say thanks for making some fun things out of my fabrics. It's like awesome to see my fabrics made up in your bags. But yeah, so I've had this idea for this machine quilting series that I wanted to do ever since my book 99 Machine Quilting Designs came out a few years ago. I've actually written a total of 5 books, but this is the one book that kind of is like a resource. Like if you're trying to decide what machine quilting designs do I want to do, you can grab the book, you can look through, and there's literally 99 designs. So ever since I wrote that book, I always had an idea that I wanted to make this epic machine quilting series where I actually show you how to stitch out all 99 designs. And so with the help of my kids, we've been working on it this summer and this winter, and we're ready to launch it in January. So it's going to be awesome.
That is really awesome to hear, and sounds like a really ambitious project. I know we had talked originally about you coming on in June, and it took longer than everyone expected, as everything does in this world, I think. I did see several social media posts over the past few months showing you and your kids when they were home from college working on the videos during their breaks. How are things going with that?
Oh, it's so great. So just for the record, so I have 3 kids. One is, he's already done and gone with college. I have 2 that are finishing up school. My middle son, named Ryan, he's awesome. He is an animation major. And so he has been able to make a series of videos for his college classes. He's created graphics and all kinds of animation. And then my younger daughter, Jenna, she is an art major. She's studying writing and fine art and painting. And so between the 2 of them, and their skills that they've actually learned in their college classes, I decided to hire them to help me shoot this video series. So originally we thought, oh, no problem. It'll only take a few weeks to do. And I'm sure, as anybody knows, like you, Annie, taking videos, making videos and editing the videos takes like 10 times longer than you think. So we got about half of it done over the summer, and we decided to go ahead and wait to launch it until January so we could basically have enough content to start off the series, get everything scheduled ahead of time, and then continue to edit the newer videos while the older ones are launching so that we knew we could provide a full year of content every single week. And I can't tell you how amazing it is to work with my adult kids and just the artistry and the engineering, and the ingenuity that they bring to the series. So you won't see them in the series itself, but I will share behind the scenes sneak peeks of them helping take pictures and doing the videos for me. And, of course they love it because they get to tell mom what to do. So
That's always fun, and it's really awesome to have your kids involved in it. And not only are they benefiting from what they've learned in school, but they've got to be learning a lot just by being involved with what you're doing too, and all the knowledge that you've already got. And I can attest that it really is awesome when you can get the family involved and to be part of it. So if can you tell us a little bit more about what the project is? You said it's based on your book. Is that a book that's available for people to buy? And or how do they get that? And then can you give us maybe a sneak peek of the designs? But actually, before we go into that, let's go back a little bit backwards still and tell us a bit about how you got started in your journey in quilting and how you developed this unique style of machine quilting, because I think you're kind of unusual in the industry in that you teach people to work with domestic machines on things that are very readily accomplishable, I think.
Oh, thanks. So basically, I have been quilting for almost 30 years, and it's been my full-time job for 18 or 19. So we're getting close to the 20-year mark. And basically, my husband at the time, he's like, well, if you can't beat him, join him. So he quit his job and he joined me kind of behind the scenes. But the way I got into quilting was actually through some charity projects. Now, my mom was always a sewer, a seamstress. She did the Halloween costumes, the prom dresses, the bags. Her name is Annie. She's a big fan of yours, by the way, makes all the fun bags. And she did what I call 3D sewing, curtains and clothing and bags and cute things, patterns that you do. And I tried it when I was younger, but it didn't really resonate with me. However, many years later, when I was with some friends, they wanted to make some charity quilts and donate them. So I went over to a friend's house. She showed me how to tie quilt. She showed me how to piece. We made some charity quilts, and it was love at first stitch. And then coming back full circle to my mom. So my mom saw that I was having this interest in sewing, and she's like, oh, finally you're interested in sewing. And so she basically had taught me the basics of a sewing machine. But once I learned quilting, I said, okay, Mom, I will sew with you, but only if we make quilts. She said, you've got a deal. She became my first student, my #1 fan. And then she started, I'm here in Las Vegas. She lived in Vegas at the time. Now she's in Utah near you. And at the time, she would talk me up to the local quilt shops. And so they invited me in to teach. Now, remember, I was in my 20s at the time, and everyone was my mother's age, my grandmother's age. I'm finally now to that age, but that didn't stop me. The ladies were so sweet to me. They were so nice to me. I loved teaching enthusiastic people, just like you do, Annie. You love teaching people that are enthusiastic about what you want to show. And it just turned into a career. And it's, I haven't looked back since.
That's really cool. So did you start writing books and things right away? Is that kind of where you got started there?
Well, I always tell everybody it takes like 10 years to become an overnight success. And I tried everything. So I taught locally until my kids were old enough. And then I decided that I wanted to write books and I wanted to do patterns. And really, I kind of have it lucky. No one was ever there saying, no, you can't do that. No, don't do that. And so I just put my stuff out into the world. And really the big turning point came in about 2015 when my first book came out with Martingale, that patchwork place. I wrote my first book with them. It was a success. And so then I went on to write 3 more books with them. Sadly, they've gone out of print now. And so my books are no longer available through them. Then I wrote book number 5 with C&T. The book that I'm focusing on now, the 99 Designs, was the last book I wrote with Martingale before they went out of business. So it's not available in print, but I was able to purchase the rights back to it, and I can offer it as a PDF download. And so basically what I'm going to do in this series is every single machine quilting design or technique that's in the book, I'm going to show you how to stitch it out. And then I'm going to show examples of what it looks like on a real quilt. And my style of quilting, it's all done on a domestic machine with walking foot and free motion. I call it, perfectly imperfect quilting, in the fact that you don't have to mark things out. Things do not have to be perfect. You're quilting asymmetrical textures. And whenever I teach these techniques, because I teach all over the country, when people see them, it kind of like I give them a pat on the back that they don't have to be perfect, and it's doable. So I guess I should really call it doable machine quilting. People see amazing quilting in these quilt shows and these amazing over the top, which is fabulous, but that's not my style. My style is doable, it's approachable. And really my philosophy is, if you don't like how it's looking, just add more quilting. Adding more quilting changes everything. And it really, the more you do it, the easier it gets and the more confidence you get in your work. So that's kind of my basic philosophy.
That's awesome. And I totally agree with that it takes some practice, and sometimes just adding a few extra lines in there takes it from not looking too great to filling it in beautifully. So that's awesome. I also really loved hearing how you got started and that your mom taught you to sew And you taught her how to quilt. That's really a blessing that you're able to enjoy that together. So I have really enjoyed following your progress over the years, and it's always fun to see how your business has grown. I hardly ever make quilts anymore because bags are more my thing. I really love the near instant gratification that they bring. How would you use your techniques to quilt for Bianni projects specifically?
Well, what I thought I would do is, you guys will indulge me, is I'll give you a little teeny tiny trunk show of some small quilted samples to get the idea of the designs in your mind. And then I want to take that from quilt to bag because I have examples of both. How does that sound?
Sounds
Okay.
perfect.
So when you're quilting these like irregular ideas or perfectly imperfect designs, you can use the walking foot or the free motion on your foot. So here's just a quick detail of what you can do. This is just texture. This is just straight lines in a couple different directions, and we're going to definitely do this one. And it's just a small little practice sample to get you warmed up. So that's one fun walking foot design. Another one that you can do is you can create a little flower. And notice how in this design there's quilting, but it's not super, super dense. Now, some of you might say, oh, that's pretty dense, but you've got maybe about a half an inch in between those lines. So it's not super crazy. Then you can do some really fun free motion designs. So here's an example of some cute little loops. And as you look at these designs, these are really good designs that'll translate to Bianni patterns because they're very loose. They're textural. And noticing these little circles, none of the circles looks exactly like any other circle. It's not marked. It's what I call just kind of like a free form texture. Here's one more I'll show you that would be fabulous for a bag. Just a fun little lines going back and forth. Okay. So hold that in your mind. And then I want to show you, okay, well, how would you apply some of those designs to a quilt? I have a little mini quilt here. This is called Modern X, and I have a larger version. It's one of my patterns. And notice how the lines, these straight lines, I've used a contrasting thread so you can see the quilting. The lines just mimic the design of the quilt. So when people say, oh, I'm just going to stitch in the ditch, I'm just going to quilt straight lines, go ahead and look at different design elements that you can quilt around to really emphasize the design of the quilt. So that's a super simple walking foot design that you can do. And it doesn't matter what the quilt looks like. You just follow the design of the quilt. And I go more in detail in my books and in my classes and things. Now, here's one that's a little bit more jazzy. This is a little sample of a quilt that I called Charming Chevrons, made out of 5-inch squares. This one is made out of solids, so you can really see the quilting. And you've got a couple straight lines there around the blocks, but then you've got some really cool swirls and some little pebbles. Now, this one is a little bit more dense, so I would save this for something special, but the idea is the same, that it's this wonderful texture. You can either use a thread where you can see the quilting, or maybe you choose a thread that kind of blends in. That's up to you, but you're adding texture. So that's kind of my big word. Now, one more sample, then I want to show you a bag that my mom made out of one of your patterns. So this last little one I want to go back to. This is just a very simple stipple design. Okay, again, very loose, very even. This was how the design that I actually showed people how to quilt the last time I was on your show in that season 2. So this is my practice sample. And what I did on that episode is I showed people how to take a big piece of fabric and just quilt that stipple. I gave my mom, my Annie, I gave her that piece of quilted fabric, and I say, Mom, make me a bag, make me one of my Annie's bag. And I believe she chose the In Control pattern, and she made me this cute little bag. Isn't that great? Out of
That's
my fabric.
fabulous.
Isn't that great? So you can see, let me kind of see the camera. You can see the quilting. That's all just that stipple. We used a couple pieces. And because the fabric's very busy, the quilting isn't the star of the show. Oh, look, she did some little loops and a little star. I did little loops and a little star. And then my mom took that and put that little fun piece of quilted fabric there. So you've got one design over here. You've got another design here on the main body of the bag. But notice when you're making, of course, these Bianni bags, the quilting is not the star of the show. The fabric is the star of the show. The structure is the star of the show. So again, if you take one of these very simple designs that's very loose and you just quilt it all over the fabric, then you cut it up into different pieces to make the bag. Now, I use this bag every day in my sewing room. When I have my little practice samples, I just keep them in here. I'm binding a few of them right now. And these are all just go in my little tote bag, and it just adds a little pop of color in my sewing room. I love this. This is one of my favorite bags. So thanks, Mom, for making it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have to say, In Control is one of my very favorite bags too. In fact, I've got one right here. I think the one you have is the or not In Control. So In Control is the little one, and Catch
Oh,
All
gotcha.
Caddy's the bigger one. So I think what you have there is Catch All Caddy. It looks a little bit bigger, but
Yeah, and it
both
has
of
this little,
those bags, it's got the
and so,
bellow dividers on the inside and the pockets
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
the handles. Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah.
what I'll do is I will take, like when I go on trips and stuff, I take these little samples in this bag, and all the little pockets is where I put all of my little notions and things. A lot of times if I'm sitting down watching TV with my husband, and I'll just grab this bag and sit it next to me, pull out one of my samples. And so I don't know if you ever intended for these bags to hold little quilty samples, but that's what I use it for.
Perfect for that. Yeah, I actually use them in every room in the house, so they're good for all kinds of things. And I really liked the idea that you had of doing a different design on each part of the pattern. Or you said, the quilting's not really the star, the fabric is, but if you did solid fabrics, those quilting designs would really show up, and then they would become kind of the star of the show. So, it's
Exactly.
just different ways to look at that. One thing that I did want to mention about that is normally our patterns are designed so that the maker quilts just 2 or 3 sets of fabric. So, for instance, on Catch All Caddy, I believe you quilt one set from which you cut the bag front and back and the pockets, and then you cut another set from which you cut the side strip and the pockets for that. But there's no reason why you couldn't quilt each of those pieces separately if you wanted to. So to do that, if that's what you want to do, is go to the part of the pattern after you've quilted the sets that tells you what you're going to cut out of those quilted pieces of fabric. And then look at those measurements and use those to determine the pieces that you need to cut from your main and lining fabrics in your soft and stable. So depending on how big that piece is, we usually recommend adding about 1 to 2 inches to the height and the width, so that if you have any wonkiness or shrinkage that happens during quilting. If it's a little tiny piece like this pocket, you could probably get by with a 1/2 inch extra added. So you kind of have to use a little judgment there. We'll add 2 inches on bigger pieces because things sometimes shift and move, and you want to make sure that you can cut all your pieces and not be short. So quilt the individual pieces, and then once you've got those quilted, cut out according to what the pieces are all supposed to be. And then from that point on, you can continue just as the pattern directs, because everything after that is the same. All right, so Christa, we have talked about some of the awesome designs that you've developed and how you'd use them for quilting quilts or for bianni projects. Can you give us some tips for techniques that you use when quilting?
Oh, sure, no problem. So kind of going back to this idea that I do walking foot quilting and free motion quilting, which applies to quilts. It can also apply to quilting those large pieces that you want to cut up into the bags. When I'm quilting it, I normally base the 3 layers with basting spray. So normally for a quilt, that would be cotton fabric, and then your batting, and then your backing. When I quilted the pieces that went into the bag, I used your soft and stable, which was really fabulous. And really, it didn't feel too much different than batting. It just felt kind of like more of a thick and a little bit more rigid batting. But my techniques really worked well with that. And so what are my techniques? When I'm quilting, I use basting spray to spray the layers, or you can use safety pins. And the idea is that you don't want the layers to shift. So that's one thing, is you want to baste your quilt really well, or baste your fabrics really well. The second thing is you want to figure out what your quilting plan is going to be. So in other words, if you're going to quilt a really fun stipple or an Oliver walking foot design, you want to start either in the middle of your quilt or on the side. Now, most people start in the middle of their quilt and they quilt from one side to the other. However, for me, I find it a lot easier to start quilting on the right-hand side of the quilt, move my way towards the middle of the piece, rotate the piece, and go back the other way. So just for example, let's say I was quilting this little piece. This would work great on a quilt. It would also work great with the soft and stable in between it, because again, the lines are not very close together. A couple of lines are close, but you've got lots of open space. So you've got a lot of room to work in here. I've got some little fuzzies on here. So basically, if this were a quilt, what I would do is I would start on the right-hand side, and I would quilt just the first set of wavy lines. Then I would scooch over and I would quilt another set of wavy lines, and I would keep scooching over and I would do wavy lines in one direction. Then I would rotate it, and then I would do wavy lines in the other direction. Now, this is a small piece and you don't really have to worry about scrunching and smushing it under the machine. But when you're doing something large, it's the same technique. So I would start in the middle, and I'd start on the side. Once I got to the middle, I would kind of scrunch up my piece as I go. And then I've only quilted about half of it. Then I would rotate the piece, and now the folded up piece, I would unfold that, and then I would quilt the other side. So whether it's a small sample or just a piece of fabric for a tote or a bag or a large quilt, the technique is the same. And that's what I go over more in depth in my books. Now, if I were to do a free motion design like this one, this is called a jagged stipple, same thing. I would start on one side of the quilt and I would work my way across to the middle, scrunch it as I go, rotate it. And now this scrunched up part, I could undo that, and then I could finish quilting all the way over. Now, if this sounds like complete gobbledygook to you out there, you want to watch my series. I break it down with real samples, with real quilts. And it's one of those things that's a lot easier to do than it sounds. When I started teaching, people really resonated because I'm teaching you exactly how I'm doing it. So in other words, I'm doing more videos now. Whenever I do something, I try to film it so that you can actually see my step-by-steps rather than trying to, figure out what I'm doing. So whenever I'm quilting, I practice the design on a small sample. Then sometimes I'll make a mini quilt if I want to see what it's going to look like on that. And then I will take it and make a larger version of it. And so the best thing about any of these designs, they look great on quilts, but like I said, they're really fun to do on the bags. And if you have somebody in your life, like let's say if you're not necessarily into bags, if you have someone in your life, like my mom, I will just quilt her these pieces of fabric, send them to her, and I say, okay, Mom, what you going to make for me now? And it's a really good trade-off.
I bet she loves that too, because the quilting part is sometimes the part that really scares us all away. So to have it all ready to go for her, I'm sure she really appreciates that. So I especially love that design that had the wavy lines going in the two directions with two of them close and the one a little bit further apart. That one I can see being really perfect for bags. And one reminder that I wanted to share is that the more you quilt through Soft and Stable, the more it compresses. So if you're doing a lot of really close stitching, like a close stipple, that's going to really compress the layers. And if you're doing a small project, that's going to be great. If you're doing a great big project, like say a travel duffel, and you want it to really have some good strong stability, a whole lot of stitching like that is sometimes going to compress it a lot and make it not have quite the same stability. So normally what we recommend is having lines that are about an inch apart. But the beauty of Soft and Stable is that you can space the lines as far apart or as close together as you choose. So if you wanted to have your lines 5 inches apart, you could. Sometimes, like I did a wool or a project, one of our laptop bags or travel bags using wool, and I didn't really feel like it needed quilting, but I wanted something just to hold the layers together, and it was a plaid, and I think I had lines that far apart, and you really couldn't see the quilting, but it held the layers together, which was really nice. So something to keep in mind there. Christa, can you show us a few of the designs that will be featured in your new video series and tell us some more about the techniques that you use on those?
Yeah, I don't know when we've got it, but I made a little trailer with the help of my son, Ryan. It's about 3 minutes long, and it kind of goes over some of the designs, kind of what you can expect when the series launches in January. So I have a couple of the samples with me here, and then I also have that video. So do you want to show the video now, or do you want to see samples?
We'll do the video. The video will be perfect.
Hey guys, it's Christa Watson here from Christa Quilt, and I'm super excited to tell you all about an epic free video series that I'm launching starting in January of 2025. I'm going to be sharing a bunch of mini lessons showing you how to quilt each and every design from my book, 99 Machine Quilting Designs. I will be covering 35 unique motifs that you can quilt with a walking foot or dual feed. plus 64 designs that can all be quilted with free motion techniques using a specialty free motion foot or a darning foot that fits your machine. You can follow along with me on the entire series on my YouTube channel with a new episode dropping each Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to have a ball as we practice some favorite designs like wavy lines and grids, infinite spirals, fun textured paisleys, or even woven switchbacks. That's one of my personal faves. That's just a tiny fraction of the dozens and dozens of designs that we're going to try, 99 of them to be exact. For each and every design, you'll see how I sketch it out first to really get a feel for how each design is going to flow. Then you'll quilt along with a practice sample that really helps you understand how to meander your way across the quilt. And finally, I'll show what many of these designs look like when quilted on actual real quilts. This series will kick off at the start of the year with an in-depth introduction going over all the tools and supplies you'll need, plus how to set up your sewing machine for success. The entire video series will be shared for free, but I highly recommend that you grab a copy of my book, which is available as a PDF download in my Etsy shop. It will serve as your roadmap for the series. Each design in the book includes a close-up photo of the sample we are stitching, along with detailed diagrams and step-by-step instructions. It even includes a variation for each and every design, so there's something for everyone. Each week, I'll share anywhere from 1 to 3 designs in the book, organized in an easy-to-follow sequence that'll help you improve your machine quilting skills in no time. It's actually going to take a little bit longer than an entire year to share them all. And the best part is, after each episode airs, it will be put into a playlist so that you can rewatch them anytime you wish. Also throughout the year, I'm going to add in a few longer videos every time I make a new quilt so you can see exactly how I applied these designs to a larger real quilt. An example is the quilt shown behind me called Swanky Spirals. You can ask me questions anytime throughout the series, and I'm happy to give you the support you need, no matter your skill level. So if you've been dying to learn how to quilt your own quilt, or you just want to improve your skills, you won't want to miss this. It's going to be an epic year for domestic machine quilting. Until then, happy quilting.
Oh man, Christa, those videos are going to be so helpful to both new and experienced machine quilters, and I really appreciate all the hard work that you and your kids are putting into making them. I can see taking some, you said each time they're going to have a little practice piece. I think people should take some soft and stable and some fabric and pick colors that they can coordinate and do those. And, you know, it probably won't take, within a few weeks, they'll have enough pieces that they could make lots of different By-Annie projects. So maybe think about what By-Annie projects you want to make and make your pieces sized to fit some of those. So I think that would be really fun. But let's check in and see if anyone has questions about machine quilting or the techniques that you covered. And Jake, if you want to bring Christa back on so she can help answer these, because I'm sure they're questions that I won't be the expert at. So the first one is, what kind of thread and needle do you recommend for quilting on soft and stable?
Okay, when I did my practice samples, I used the same exact thread and needle as I did when making a quilt. And so it was fun because it was the first time I'd played around with soft and stable, and it was really easy to work with. So my recommendation is, I love using natural fiber threads like cotton because they work well in most machines. They're soft, they're pliable, they're a little bit thinner, and so they can kind of blend in. So my favorite, I actually designed thread for Aurifil. So I love their cotton, just their regular 50 weight, and you want to match the size of your needle with your thread. So with a 50 weight cotton thread, you just want to use a size 80 sharp or top stitch needle. Now, I recommend using a sharp needle, which means it just has a very pointy point. You can also use a metallic needle, you can use a quilting needle, because that's going to penetrate all layers of a quilt. And again, that works perfectly for the soft and stable. And Annie, I just have to throw a little extra thing. When you said that, I just had a huge light bulb. I'm sure that when folks are making their bags, they have pieces left over, like odd pieces and stuff of soft and stable. Those would be perfect for making these practice samples, because my samples are maybe like 6, 7, 8 inches, but you could do a 5-inch piece, you could do a 10-inch piece, and that's a great way to use up your scraps and not have any waste. I love that idea.
Absolutely. And then to put it into a project, use it as a pocket or something like that here and there. And I know that when you did the episode with us in season 2, you were quilting a great big piece of soft and stable. As I recall, it was like a 2-yard piece. And you showed how to do that. But doing something really little with a piece of soft and stable is just going to be so much easier. You're going to, and the nice thing I think about soft and stable, and as compared, say, to quilt batting, is that the soft and stable is stable. It doesn't stretch. It doesn't, do anything. And it's got that nice fabric lining on each side that kind of hugs your fabric, so it's not going to wiggle around, and you're really going to be able to concentrate on the quilting. One thing, and I'm sure maybe somebody will ask this, but I noticed in your videos you had gloves on. Can you talk a little bit about why you use gloves when you quilt?
Sure, yeah, and I did wear the gloves when I quilted the piece as well. So what the gloves are going to do, they're going to give you a little bit more purchase or a little bit more grip when you're putting a big piece through the machine. Now, if you're using a small piece, not a big deal. But again, we're talking about big quilts, a big piece of fabric and batting, or fabric and soft and stable. Because you're shoving something big through a small machine, you've got to give it a little bit more elbow grease to kind of get it through. And so having those gloves with little grippy dots on them, they help reduce the amount of fatigue on your hands, because it gives you a little bit of extra friction. And I have specialty gloves with my name on them that are infused with magical pixie dust that makes you a better quilter. But you can also use garden gloves. You can use finger cots. There's lotions out there. There's little things called bat scooters that I've seen. There's I'm just trying to think of all the things you can put. There's weights you can put down to kind of push around it. Anything you want to try and play around with, that's another time to experiment. If you're going to join me for this series, try out different techniques to see what feels most comfortable for you while you're quilting.
Yep, and different products. I know I have some of the, I think they were called machingers. I've had them for 20 or 30 years,
Yes.
back when I used to quilt. I was always blown away by the difference that it made in just terms of my relaxation and enjoying the projects, just having my hands not constantly sliding off the pieces I was going. So I definitely do recommend that. The next question was, what stitch length do you use when you're doing the quilting?
Oh, excellent question. So when I am doing the walking foot quilting, either straight lines or gentle wavy lines, I want to increase my stitch length, because when you're dealing again with bulk, it has a tendency to shrink up your stitches because of friction and drag. So here's a quick little rule of thumb. On my sewing machine, I sew on a Bernina, my default stitch length is just set to 2.0. I increase the stitch length up to 3.0 or 3.5. Now, it's really easy to do that when you are doing walking foot quilting, because that's like regular piecing where you can stitch the stitch length. However, when you're free motion quilting, if you have a stitch regulator, you can adjust the length of your stitches. If you do not have a stitch regulator, which most of my students do not, then you regulate the length of your stitches by how fast or slow you are quilting and moving relative to the speed of your machine. And you know what they say, practice makes progress. So really all of those words are just to say, increase your stitch length, make your stitches a little bit longer to help make up for that friction and drag while you're quilting.
That's really a good advice. And I know that you said you do use basting spray. I don't usually use basting spray on small pieces, but
Right.
I wanted to mention that you have a really excellent video tutorial that I'm sure people can find on your website that shows how you baste your layers for your quilt. Would you use that very same technique if you were basting a big piece for a Bianni project?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I will say is that for everybody, test it first, take a little sample piece and test it to see how the results are. Some people don't like basting spray because it's a chemical and they don't like the smell, so that you can use pins instead. And the other thing that I will do is after I have basted the quilt or the layers together, I will take it to the iron and I will iron it together. That kind of sets the glue and it mushes all the fibers together. But again, test it to make sure, because you don't want to melt anything. So make sure, if you're concerned that your iron is super hot, you can always put a piece of cotton fabric over it before you iron it, or like a pressing cloth, or you can turn down the heat of your iron. And with anything, I'll tell you kind of my secret to life and the secret to my whole quilting business. Everything I do is an experiment. If I've never done anything before, I will try version 1 of it, see how that works. Try version 2 of it, see how that works. Try different products, try different combinations. And the fun part is experimenting and see what you like the best. So give it a try, little practice piece first, and then you can do it on a larger piece.
Such good advice. And I always say too, try it, and then, if you don't have great success with it, come back in 3 months or 6 months and try it again, because you may have progressed in other areas that are now going to make those things much easier than they were. And by the same token, if you haven't quilted in a long time, don't expect that, if you were an expert quilter when you stopped 6 or 10 years ago, where I don't know that I was ever an expert, but I quilted a lot of quilts. I don't know that I could sit down and quilt a quilt now, because it's been a long time since I've used those particular skills. So don't be afraid to do a little bit of warm up and a little bit of practice. And By Annie projects are perfect for that, because you could do it on the body of a tote that's going to be covered by pockets. So start on the pieces that are covered and then move on to the pieces that are going to be out front and work on those. All right. The next question was, did you use soft and stable in those little mini quilt samples that you held up, or were those done with batting?
That was just done with regular batting. But like I said, I definitely, like you said earlier, I took a 2-yard piece of a couple different fabrics. And so 2 yards, that's like 72 inches. That's a big piece. But all of that was easily quilted on my machine. And so I've got some leftover pieces. And now that you've said that, so when I go out and teach people, I always say, oh, you can take your little samples and you can just turn them into like mug rugs or pot holders. I'm going to start letting them know to use their soft and stable, because like I said, until you mentioned it, I didn't think of that, of using the leftovers. So now I'm going to start recommending that in my classes. So there you go.
Oh, yeah. And we've got so many little projects like, well, this isn't quilted, but like this little clam up, a little probably 8 by 10 piece quilted would make a cute little bag. And if you had a whole stack of those ready to go when you need a quick and easy gift, the hard part's done. You're ready to just put it together. Okay, exactly. The next question was about needles, which you've already talked about. So it looks like we've covered those. So thank you so much, Christa, for all that good information. Before we close, do you have any advice for people who are just starting out or looking to develop their own unique style of quilting?
Well, I am an enabler, and I'm a yes woman, and I say dive in there and give it a try. Don't be afraid. You're not going to mess it up. Just try it and practice today and practice tomorrow. Tomorrow, you'll be a better quilter than today. And so my whole goal with sharing this series on YouTube with teaching people is to help them get over their fear of free motion quilting, and especially on those little projects. Let's say you quilt a practice piece. Well, maybe you only, maybe the one corner of it is your favorite part. Cut that part out and make that into a small little tote or something like that. So yeah, just start with the basics, learn the fundamentals, practice, and like any motor skill, you're gonna get better every single time. And every quilt that you make, every By Annie bag that you make, you're gonna get better, and you're going to get comfortable with your tools and supplies.
All right, so before we wrap things up, can you share anything about maybe some new fabric lines, quilt patterns, or collaborations that you're working on now, besides the videos? Not that that's not keeping you plenty busy.
Well, so I am currently promoting my current fabric line right here called Dazzle Dots. This is really fun rainbow colors. These are the exact fabrics that I used in the quilt behind me. It's just made out of fat quarters plus some background fabrics in rainbow colors. And this one is available in shops now. And then coming in February is Dazzle Dots 2. which is also really cute dots, but these are the pastel colors. So I did the brights, and now I'm doing all these pastels. These are going to be nice little basics that you can, quilt up some fat quarter bundles and just, use those in bags, use them in quilts. And then probably in March, once we're well underway with the 99 design series, I have a quilt that I'm going to make that uses both Dazzle Dots 1 and 2. And I'm going to run a quilt along concurrently with the 99 series so that people can start taking what they've learned and actually apply it to a real quilt. So I would say just, follow me on all the social medias, subscribe to my YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff. And then you can kind of see what I'm up to. But yeah, if you love bright, colorful fabric like me, Dazzle Dots 1, Dazzle Dots 2, it's a really, really fun to play with.
Those are so much fun, and we have had so much fun using your fabrics over the years. As you can see, we've got Christa fabrics all over behind us, and we did a number of things with the Dazzle Dots in the bright colors. Unfortunately, they are all off at trunk shows right now, so I didn't have anything here that I could show, but I'm looking forward to getting some of those lighter ones and being able to incorporate those into some more projects, so we'll have to talk. So, Christa, you mentioned that you're on social media. You said, where's the best place for them to look to find you?
Okay, if you want to go to one place, just remember ChristaQuilts.com. It's spelled with the CH, but because I know people spell my name wrong, I actually own all the spellings of Christa Quilts, so it will point you to the right direction. From there, you can go to my shop. You can go to my YouTube channel. You can go to my Instagram, everywhere. Or if you just Google Christa Quilts, you will find me. Those that subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll get a notification every week, every Friday. You can just go there so they can watch you on Wednesdays. They can watch me on Fridays. But yeah, start off with my basic website. And that's kind of my headquarters where you can find everything else that you need. And you can contact me anytime. There's a contact me. You guys can email me. I've never met a quilter I didn't like. And, I always like making more friends.
That's awesome. So your new series is going to start the first Friday in January?
Yeah, January 3rd. We're going to kick it off with the January 3rd. We're going to kick it off with the introduction, which is going to be maybe about 10 to 15 minute long video. We're editing it now. That's going to be like, this is everything you need. Here's how you set up your sewing machine. And then those episodes are going to go every single Friday. And then every now and then I'm going to throw in a longer episode that says like, here, this is how you quilt this quilt behind me. So yeah, if they just show up every Friday, 8 a.m. on my YouTube channel, it's pre-recorded, not live, but I'm really good to interact with people and answer their questions and stuff anytime they have them.
And is that 8 a.m. Pacific time?
Yes, yeah, 8 a.m. Pacific time. I figured I wanted them to launch at a time when I am up and can answer questions and troubleshoot and all the technology stuff. I think in the future, I would love to do the live stuff like you do. I'm a little gun shy of that because of internet connections and, not being able to edit myself. But going on your show definitely gives me that practice and that confidence to be live. So thanks for that opportunity, Annie.
Yeah, you're a natural at it. You wouldn't have any problems at all. The trick is having someone like Jake or Ryan in the background to get you back on when the internet goes out and things like that, and having the cameras showing what you want. But yeah, I can see you're going to be doing great at that. So I'm really, really excited. Thank you so much for taking the time today to be with us, sharing your talents for quilting and design. It's really fun to talk to you. And I really can't wait for this new series of video tutorials to come up. So thank you again, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with Christa. She is such a nice lady and so full of enthusiasm about everything she does. So be sure to look for her new videos coming out in the new year. And I really look forward to seeing how you use them on your next By Annie project. Maybe we need to do a little challenge to incorporate those somehow. I'm still making plans for what's going to be on live for next year. I haven't gotten very far at all, so maybe that's something we can bring in. As always, remember that you need to ask for these patterns, books, and supplies at your local quilt shop. They're such an important part of our sewing and quilting community. It's up to all of us to keep them strong and vibrant. And if they don't have them, they can get them. Christa's fabrics and patterns come from Benartex. By Annie and probably Brewer has her patterns, and By Annie products you can get from any distributor or directly from us. And we're always happy to set up wholesale accounts for those stores, so just ask them to contact us for more information.